The cloud. Hi, friends. Welcome. Welcome to this session on financial aid slash paying for college slash navigating college affordability. We're with one of my, I would say, if I could take the liberty, Amanda, of calling us good friends. I think we've worked together long enough to, to be able to say that. And I'm so grateful you're here. And I always learn stuff when you're here. I'm playing moderator slash Vanna White, which is becoming still some people get what that means, but I'm basically just going to be turning the letters here. And we're going to be covering 4 frameworks that you can adapt immediately when working with families to make college cost talk proactive and clear. We'll talk about, actually, Amanda will talk about 12 common college affordability phrases that we hear families say, like, we'll figure it out. And I heard college X gives money. And what to say to these, to those, what responses to give. A four-step response format to get students and parents on the same wavelength about paying for college. 4, maybe more of Amanda's favorite resources to use when building a financially fit college list, and then Q&A. You can throw your questions in the chat. Our awesome moderators today, Alex and Rebecca, will grab them and put them on our behind the scenes Google Doc, and we will get to as many as we can. Thanks for being here. And Amanda, I think I might just let you introduce yourself and do the darn thing. And I'll be here. If folks have questions that I feel like I can answer, I will. But if it's financial aid, I'll probably defer to Amanda.
Thanks, I
So here we
appreciate that.
go.
Okay, hello, welcome, friends. I always find as a teacher, it's important to tell students to consider the source. So I'm going to introduce myself so you can kind of have an idea of how I came to be in financial aid. So I love math and I love helping people. So math teacher is cool, but financial aid specialist is in some ways like kind of just very exciting to me. So I'm all about empowering students to be able to afford college, as I know you all are as well. So I got my start in education. I did a Teach for America thing, and then I worked for the College Advising Corps, which is how I got into college advising. I worked at a local high school here in North Carolina, and every year I was there, we doubled the number of accepted scholarships. Not what they won, but like what they actually got to use for the senior class. So I really love financial aid. It was the thing that clicked for me. I'm a member of these organizations. I've worked with lots of lovely people, including College Essay Guy. And so, yes, I would definitely agree. We are friends, Ethan, at this point. You bring me on to such cool things. You introduce me to such neat people. So let's get started with talking to families about college costs. So in this, there are 2 ways. We have limited time, so I'm gonna jump right in. There are 2 ways that I find that counselors tend to approach paying for college conversations. The only thing that is bad is to not approach that conversation at all, and just leave it till the end, where you have that admit deny scenario where the kid, like one of my students the first year, got into UCLA from North Carolina, was Pell eligible, and UCLA said, "That'll be 50 grand, please." Like, we don't want that to happen. So we need to have these conversations earlier. So we can have a reactive conversation. There's 12 common conversation stems we're going to talk about, and we can talk about, we'll talk through some productive responses to things you're already hearing your parents say. And then the other option is obviously proactive. So neither of these is necessarily better. It's all at how it fits into your counseling style, but I would argue proactive is a lot less stressful, probably. So we're going to talk about 4 possible frameworks to build into your intake pre-list building conversations. The conversations you're already having, the process you already have. It's not about breaking it apart and putting it all back together. It's take one of these and it can gently fold into things you already do. All right, so let's talk about 4-point responses and 12 common conversation stems. And I tend to go fast, so prepare to take notes. So our goals in college affordability conversations, we're talking about cost in a way that's productive and aligns to family values. I wouldn't pay X number of dollars to go to one university, but another family might. Or I might have one budget or one idea of what I'm willing to pay for a college. A family might have a completely different idea. So when we're talking about this, it's coming from a place of empathy. It's coming from a place of let's figure out where they are and we'll align to what it is they're looking for. So the first step in this is to affirm, to say that you hear what they're saying. Something like, it sounds like, so Ethan, it sounds like you're having a quiet day. Or I understand that. I understand that you have heard this. I understand that you're feeling this way. So that's our first step. And don't worry, if this seems kind of amorphous, nebulous, we're going to get into the nitty gritty of what this looks like. But just bear with me for the first round. Second step is to clarify. So it sounds like you think that college should be free. I want to clarify what you mean by free. Ask a sincere question. Um, I know sometimes there's a great, I don't know how many of you are members of IECA, but there's a great article in Insights every time run by the Subcommittee on College Affordability that has like things parents say. And sometimes our knee-jerk reaction to a question is not the most sincere form. So I advise using something called Botox brow. This is something that I was taught when I taught middle schoolers. And when you're talking to a middle schooler, anyone who's in a heightened emotional state, asking a question with a furrowed brow and asking that same question with like a clear face makes a huge difference. Why do you think college should be free? Or why do you think college should be free? Like it makes a difference in how we use our body language. Um, and then finally, this is the part I love, is here's what I know. So it sounds like you think college should be totally free for Bobby. I'm wondering what you think qualifies him to merit free tuition. Here's what I know, and then sharing some information that may realign that family's vision to your own. And then direct and the next steps. Here's where we're going to go from here. Okay, so let's put this in practice. Affirm, clarify, here's what I know, direct steps. Okay, this is where it gets fun. You talked about Vanna White earlier. This is Jeopardy. Or something similar. You guys get to pick. So I want to see in the chat something you hear families say, and we're going to dive into how to do this 4-part framework for that particular thing that folks say. And you're like, how do I respond to this? Maybe you already have a response, but we're going to work through this framework to craft a response. So what are we seeing in the chat, Ethan? What number are folks wanting to dive into?
All right, I'm taking a look here. We're giving them a second. So essentially, yeah, take any one of these that you're like, oh yeah, I get that one all the time.
Mm-hmm. I know you need a minute to read through it, so take a second. And we'll do multiple of these. Probably won't do all 12. And we can circle back at the end if there's one we didn't get to, but just the most popular ones. You're like, man, I hear this all the time.
Oh, there's a big range. Actually, seven has got it. Seven has got it, I think, by maybe by a lot. But
Okay.
I
And
think
don't worry, we'll do more. So
the big
let's do
range of
first
answers
pick.
says you've picked a lot of really good ones that people tend to see. But yeah, I think it's
Good,
seven.
good. After doing this for a decade, I should hope so. Yeah, so let's do 7, and then you guys can throw in votes for second place here. All right, so we're gonna click on this. I don't want to take, or we don't want to take out loans. Okay, got it. So, affirm. Student loan debt is certainly a specter that looms over far too many adults. I totally get avoiding them if at all possible. So, affirming, I see where you're coming from. They hear about scary debt loads. They don't want to hamstring their students' financial future. They want to have college be a net gain. Okay. So, step 1, affirming them. I understand where you're coming from about debt. Too many young adults are way too burdened with too much debt. Okay. Second step, clarify. Without the use of loans, how do you intend to cover college cost? So, and it really is, you're not expecting a specific answer. You're not setting them up with these clarifying questions to move them in a specific way. It's just taking that breath in that moment before you jump to an assumption of what they mean by that. Because I did this in my first year of advising. If someone said they didn't want loans, I was like, okay, so you want to go to community college, or like you want to do this, like you just want no debt at all. Like we have to, I just jumped. And here it's, okay, what do you think paying for college without loans will look like? Like we can cover $20,000. We just don't think we should have to have loans because Johnny has straight A's. What is it? Get to the root of what they're understanding about why people take out loans. And then here's what I know. I know that scholarships and grants are available. You can talk them through scholarship and grant eligibility. So Johnny is a great student. Fantastic. So would you be interested in looking at some colleges that potentially give a lot of merit aid? We could talk about no loan and no tuition colleges. The no loan colleges are those, Jeff Slingo would call them the sellers colleges, the 100% need met colleges, and no tuition colleges like work colleges. I'm thinking Berea, College of the Ozarks, Warren Wilson, those sorts of things. Because when you start throwing out other possibilities of, yeah, there are places that don't do loans. They're either really competitive or they're kind of off the beaten path. You're just sharing information. You can also share about community college. I know that community college is something that's affordable for virtually every family. I also know that there are non-traditional college paths like doing ASU and Starbucks and having the student work and then they get reimbursed for tuition. And then most financial packages include a mix of scholarships, grants, loans for a lot of students. It's one of the tools of financial aid. And I also know that you can't appeal loans into grants unless there is an unusual circumstances that is not otherwise explained in your financial aid forms. So you don't have to cover all of this. It's, again, you get to know the things that you get to know the family, you get to know which pieces of information are probably most helpful to share. If I have a really digging their heels in kind of family about we are not doing loans, I tend to go towards the no tuition or non-traditional routes and say, okay, if that is the number one goal over fit, over anything else, then these are the options that we know will work. And when if they start to backpedal from that, then we've unveiled for them that maybe that's not as big of value as they thought it was. And then we direct. Decide which is more flexible. Is it the college list that's more flexible or the budget? So recap some of this. I understand loans are something that are really scary for a lot of folks. Without loans, how would you do it? How would you intend to cover the cost? Then hear them out, then take the appropriate, here's what I know. And then, okay, it sounds like really you do want to stick to this budget. Let's find colleges that will meet this budget. Or it sounds like maybe you're not as flexible about your college list and loans might need to be in the mix. We'll try to keep them out, but we need to be prepared for that eventuality. Okay, back to the board. What's our second one, guys?
All right, let me see. We got quite a few votes for number 9.
All right, number 9, which college gives the most money? Yes. Like there's a list and they will just tell us this college will give every student $50,000. That's exactly how it works. Or I heard college X gives money. Yes, because their student's best friend's aunt's cousin got a full ride at this college and they didn't have as high a GPA and therefore this. We hear this a lot. This is very common. Okay, so affirm. Some colleges are certainly more generous than others. It's true, like acknowledging that they're right. Um, do you mean most merit-based aid or most need-based aid? And this is going to kind of start the educational process for them of, do they know the difference between those two? And if they do, okay, that clarifies which type of money that they're looking for. Um, and then sharing, here's what I know. I know that colleges have priorities, and some are very clear about what those priorities are and how they give aid, and some are not. So if a college is meeting 100% of student need, there may be scholarships, but that's not where the priority is. They're prioritizing need-based aid. Or a college discounts half tuition off to a lot of students, but maybe they don't have as deep of pockets when it comes to filling gaps for need-based aid. So it really depends on the institution. You can choose to open the Pandora's box of talking about enrollment management or not. It really depends on the family and how green they are to this process. But you can talk about how that plays a role and how families are targeted and how award letters are managed and massaged in order for the college to get the best possible class for the lowest possible dollar. Just making it clear that the enrollment managers and the families are kind of on opposite sides of the tug of war here. And then we direct. We say, okay, let's have a conversation about scholarships. Let's have a conversation about the financial aid formula. So this might look something like this. Which college gives the most money? Some colleges are most certainly more generous than others. Are you asking about merit-based or need-based? Okay, you're talking about merit-based. Let's talk about why colleges give money. Why do they give merit-based aid? Well, some out-of-state publics are trying to attract top test scoring students or top students from other states, so they could incentivize it that way. That might be a reason they do. So I tend to talk more about types than I talk about specific institutions when answering this question. I'll talk about how in-state institutions are prioritizing their own students most of the time. I'll talk about how less selective privates are discounting more, and I just give them a broader idea of how it all works. Okay. Yeah, back to the board.
let's see. I would guess that coming in third, I'm kind of tr like doing a little, uh, let's see, points in different categories. Ooh, it's pretty broad. I think I'm going to be selfish and I'm going to pick one. Because I see votes for one, three, six, and five. Let's do
Okay.
one. One's a pretty, I like one. I've heard
Yeah. Yeah. We'll figure it out. These are the most famous last words. Okay. We'll figure it out. Okay. I'm glad you're fully supportive of your student choosing their best fit. That's how I would first respond to this. We'll figure it out. They're saying it from a place of love for their student. They're saying, I want what's best for them when they say we'll figure it out. So the first thing to do is just applaud that. I'm glad you're supportive of your student. Clarify. And this is a very important clarifying question. I'm wondering what resources your family would use to pay a $60,000 to $90,000 tuition bill for 4 consecutive years. Is that something you're prepared to do independently without sacrificing your quality of life, your retirement, or your student's financial future? This wording, I've gotten pretty much close to this almost every time I ask the question, because that stops in its tracks right there of asking like, and if a family doesn't bat an eye and say, yeah, we can do that, conversation's over. Great, you will figure it out. Let's move on. But if that causes them to pause, then it's okay, let's talk about this now. Let them get that out, let them explain what their thinking is. And they might say no. A lot of times the answer I get to this is, well, we're sure they'll get scholarships. It won't be quite that much, or we can take out some loans. And just reiterating, this is 4 years, and a lot of students don't graduate in 4 years. They'll take 4.5, 5. So we just want to be really clear before setting on this path and eliminating other options that this is going to work out. And then I share, here's what I know. I know that I hate having that admit deny conversation with families. It's the worst conversation I have, where a student has been admitted to a college they're very much excited about. Their parents have told them, we will figure it out. And then the tuition bill comes, and there is no way that that is a feasible number. Then the parent is having to have a terrible conversation with their student, one way or the other. It's either, we can't afford this, I'm so sorry, we have to do something else that wasn't on the in your view at all, or it's, don't worry, we'll make it work. But then and the students can't really comprehend tens of thousands of dollars of debt. They're not developmentally there. And so what happens is 10 years down the line, they see how much of a financial burden it was to their family, and it's not a good family dynamic. So what I tell parents is, back up for a second. What I tell parents is, it is much kinder and more honest to say to your student now, everything has a budget. Houses have a budget, clothing has a budget, food has a budget, college has a budget. This is the budget we can work within. Apply elsewhere, but this is what we need to get it to in order for it to be sustainable for our family. And having the student will appreciate that conversation in October when they can do something with that information, rather than April when all of their options are gone. The other thing I will share is, I know that students should not take out, my rule of thumb is more than 2/3 their starting salary. So if you're going to be, a North Carolina teacher making, I don't know, $35,000 a year to start, you can't take out more than $20,000 in debt. Like that's the maximum. So you're going to be, if your expected income is much higher, maybe you can take out a little more debt, but that's what students are capable of carrying. All right, and then we redirect. So for the best outcome, we have some options. You can either increase your college income, you can get more scholarships and grants. We can talk about those pathways of like, how do we get more money to aid this tuition bill? Or we can decrease the expense. We can talk about, how do we make the college list more affordable from the get-go? Or you can do both. Both is great. Both is fantastic. But we should start with one of these. Either we need to look at ways that you can increase the amount of money your family has to go to multiple colleges, to take to different colleges, or we need to find a way to have a college list that fits within your family's realistic budget. Okay, oops, back to the board.
I think I'm gonna. Oh, four came in a couple times.
Four? Okay.
Susie
Oh,
has
yes, I love this one. I love this one. Okay, Susie has to stay in state. I get this all the time. Okay. Affirm. public and state universities offer such great opportunities for families in our state. Yes, we have in-state universities. I'm so glad we have them. That's awesome. Can you tell me more about this decision? Is it because of cost, proximity, or something else? And then leave that open. They might say, we're a really close family. We want them to be close to home. And student will agree, yes, I don't want to go more than a weekend away, like driving distance, like 3-4 hours outside the bubble for my family. Okay, great. That's fantastic. In that case, I might ask a follow-up question, but proximity, great. Or cost. They think out of state is automatically more expensive. Or they might have some other reason I have not even considered that just comes out of the blue. So that's where I want to start. Then I'll share what I know. Private institutions offer no difference in tuition, in-state, out-of-state. These are things we know. I'm just saying it as if talking to a parent. I'll highlight that fact that, private institutions, the next state over, that's not going to make a difference in terms of tuition. So opportunities to overcome out-of-state tuition. So a lot of you are living in lovely places that have reciprocity agreements between states. North Carolina is not in the academic common market. Really stinks. But we might talk about other ways like merit aid or something else. So this is one of my favorite things to say to families. I love this. Would you allow me to look for great fit schools for your student that will likely be the same direct cost as in-state institutions? So I'll just ask if they'll let me. Say, I understand what you're saying about cost or proximity, but like if we're close to other states, or if I can get the cost down to about what you'd pay in-state tuition, is that feasible? Is that fine? Now, again, this kind of depends on your state, and each of you know your state's aid programs. Some of them are really great. Like if you're in Georgia, the Georgia Hope or Tennessee Lottery or things like that, like those don't carry out of state. So there's a lot of incentive for kids to stay in state. North Carolina doesn't have that. We have need-based. So it doesn't really matter for us as much. So I'll offer the choice to families and just say, can I look? And maybe I'll find a great school that's right over the border. Okay. Last one, maybe?
Last one, let's
Circle
see.
back if we have time at the end.
I'm looking through, I'm going back and forth between. All right, last chance, last votes, go.
I
We've
know
got,
this is interactive.
I know, I love it. I'm like taking notes here. We've got, okay, a bunch of votes came in for 3. There we go.
3, we aren't applying for aid. Yes. I'm going to talk to folks about this in the student parent one tonight. Affirm. I hear you. Many families that apply for aid for their students' freshman year apply for aid only to find out it didn't benefit them. You're right. Some people apply for aid. It doesn't help them at all. I'm curious, what led you to make this decision? So this is where they can share what's going on. Like what information, good, bad, otherwise, what do they know that's informing this decision? Because they can make the decision for themselves. I do not tell families what to do. I advise and I let them choose, right? And so, but I want them to have good information to make a good decision. So some folks are saying they're not going to do it because they think it's going to affect admission. Like if we say we're applying for aid, then Johnny's not going to get in. Okay, well, let's pause and we might unpack that about how you don't play games with the admissions office. You don't get accepted and though, oh wait, we need aid. Like, no, that does not fly. They might think they're just ineligible. They don't think, oh, I'm not going to get a Pell Grant, therefore FAFSA is just not my thing. Or they may truly be full pay. They might be saying, you know what, we got this covered. We've got $500,000 sitting in an account for our one student. We're good. So great. So just unpacking this question from them. Okay, so here's what I know. FAFSA is, hope to God, this is the one time I'm going to mention it today, I swear, is hopefully simpler this year. That's a whole other can of worms, but just saying, hopefully it's going to be better. Unpacking okay, if they say that they just think they're not eligible, saying, okay, well, FAFSA actually serves not only federal grants, but also if you want to take out those federal loans, if the student needs federal loans, that's the FAFSA. Also, a lot of states use the FAFSA form for their state aid. So if your state has need-based aid, and sometimes a lot of times the threshold for that may be higher than what the federal aid is. And then institutional aid. So the vast majority of colleges, all the non-CSS profile colleges, are using the FAFSA for their institutional aid. Now, I know this past year, a lot of institutions have started using their own aid form, and we will see where that lands. But just making it very clear, like, that's still under the umbrella of applying for aid, FAFSA or not. So just making it clear that as long as your ability to pay according to these forms is lower than the cost of attendance, you could get aid. So as long as even if you can afford 50 and the college costs 60. Like I just read, I'm sure some of you already saw this. I just read about Colby College extending more to the middle class and how if for families making up to $200,000 a year, the max cost for them will be $20,000 and there will be no loans. So like again, you still have to apply for aid, like you still have to go through the process, but so anyways, so that's just those. And then making loans, that's clear. And then merit scholarships. I have heard of these, but I have not encountered them, but I am told they exist about some merit scholarships requiring FAFSA submission. And it makes sense why institutions or organizations would want that. They want you to make sure you've maximized other aid. Like I'm thinking the Gates Scholarship, like you've maximized other aid before their last dollars come in. So that makes sense. And then this is a big one a lot of folks don't think about. Circumstances change. Um, Heaven forbid the breadwinner of the family loses their job or loses the ability to work. And the next year you need to apply for aid. Maybe freshman year was covered, but the next year you're not. Some institutions have policies in place. If you did not apply for aid your freshman year, it is incredibly difficult to get aid for any of the other years. They are counting on you being a full pay student. Not all institutions, but some. So that's something, if a family's making the decision not to apply for aid, that's something to clarify with their institutions of if in later years we do need aid. You can wait until after they're accepted if you want. So it's not affecting admissions or any perception of that. But like, if we need to apply for aid later, what does the process look like? Because it hits when you least expect it. You can also talk about some institutions are need aware, and there is a full pay advantage, particularly when it comes to the wait list. At that point, all of their aid has been given out. And so when they're looking at the wait list, they're looking at it with the eye of like, we don't have more aid to award. So we need to find families that can manage them, be able to afford our institution. And so, yes, it exists. So sharing, yes, this is what I know. It's not true for all institutions, but just letting them know. And then direct. It's really simple. I've given you the information. Please ask follow-up questions. This is a decision you need to take very, very seriously, but make the right decision for your family of what you believe is the best step. Okay. All right. Shall we move on? All right. Okay. We can come back to these. If there's one you're like, oh, she didn't get to this one, we'll save time at the end. I'll try. All right. All right. So let's talk about 4 frameworks to kickstart college cost conversations. So we talked about reactive. All of those are reactive. A parent says something, you're responding to them in a way that's positive and productive and aligning to each other. This is the proactive part. This is how we just build it into the conversation from the beginning. So as folks who went to college before I did, knew most of the time, folks who are in these kids' parents and grandparents' generations, they applied to college and then they figured out how to pay for it and they did the financial aid forms and they moved on with life. Now these processes are happening. It's my one cool animation here. These processes are happening at the same time. So they're not happening one after another. We're having to figure out financial aid as we're figuring out the college list. So building affordability conversations into your list building framework. All right, framework 1 is to focus on fit. So a lot of counselors, this is already how they operate. So this works great. Framework 2, focus on affordability. This is a little more in like my neck of the woods and how I tend to approach things because of my niche. But it works well for a lot of families, especially if you're working with high need families. It works great. Framework 3, focus on family feelings and facts. And then framework 4 is build out a budget and then go shopping, just like we would with anything that's not college. So let's walk through these. Okay. So this one's the easiest, most common sense way to go about it. So how does cost factor into your college search? You could just open with that question. How does cost factor into your college search? Or if you find you need a little bit more lead in, I find what works really well is this triangle. Match, fit, cost. Explaining match is the institution being interested in you, your academic ability to succeed there. Fit being all the social and major and other things, like what makes it a place that you would thrive. And then cost. Is it a financial fit for the family? And I make the joke that it's like the triangle you see for college freshmen of like sleep, social life, and grades, pick two. For a lot of students, finding colleges that met two of these criteria, piece of cake. Finding ones that made all three, kind of challenging. So that's where I talk to families and I just lay out this triangle and I say, where do you want to start? We need to talk about all three of these. They all have to be considered in building your college list. Where do you want to start the conversation? If they're really anxious about admissibility, they'll start with match. If they're really anxious about finding the best fit school, they'll start there. Some families want to start with cost. It just depends. I find it's usually a pretty even split between all three of them. So in creating a financially fit college list, it's the same thing y'all typically do. Look based on fit. The world's your oyster. Let's not, necessarily care about grades or anything else. Let's find some really great colleges that work for you. Okay, now let's bucket them. Slam dunk colleges, target stretch schools. Like, let's create a list that is a balanced college list. This is something that counselors do innately. We do it already. Then do the same thing with financial aid. We need at least one or two financial safety schools. If they don't give you a dime, we're going to make it work. And then no more than two financial reach schools. And what do I mean by financial reach school? That means you have searched the college's website, you've done the net price calculator, you have researched all possible avenues of making the school affordable, and you've come up with nothing. Like, you have no reason to suspect this college is affordable. I don't tell kids, don't apply, you can't afford it. I will never say that to a student. I will say, you can have one or two of those, and we'll see what happens, because stranger things have happened. Like, let's see how this plays out. But we need most of your schools to be reasonable. And the story I share is that when I was applying to college, I applied to 7 schools, and one of them was UVA, and it was great. I got in, and my family made, I think, $35,000 a year my senior year of high school, and they wanted me to pay $35,000 a year. I was like, what? Makes no sense. Why did I spend $60 and write 2 essays for this? So just kind of giving that, like, yeah, I'm protecting you in a way. Like, I'm not squashing dreams. I'm not being super practical. Like, it's not a bad thing. I'm saving you grief, I promise. Okay. But Amanda, how do I know if a school is a financial safety, target, or reach? Okay. So here's where my 4 favorite resources come in. And I just kind of did them all at once because I know a lot of you are probably like me and you just want to start Googling and stuff. So I'm gonna let you have some fun and do that while I talk about them for a second. So for a quick snapshot of a private or in-state college, I would not recommend this for out-of-state colleges because the data is based on all of their students and a lot of them are for in-state. So the amounts that they quote you, they don't have out-of-state students in mind. It's not to say they're not folded in, it's just not a good picture. So for private institutions, for in-state institutions, College Scorecard is great. It breaks it down into quintiles of incomes. I am told that they're supposed to, either on College Scorecard and another resource, I'm keeping my ear to the ground, break up that final quintile, which starts at 110,000 and up, which, as we know, 110,000 and up is a very large range of incomes. So I'm told that they're going to expand that out a little bit. So hopefully we'll have better data. But it does break down, up to different income levels and gives an average or average net cost for each income range. So that's really helpful for just a quick snapshot. For a non-need kiddo who really wants to know where the merit aid is, going back to the which schools give money, this is the resource I pull up for them and say, have fun. Like, let's research. And that's a Big J consulting resource. There's a domestic version and an international version. Make sure you pick the one for you. And it's really great because, and if at the end we have time, and you guys want to explore one, I'll pull it up and we'll peek through it together. But it's really great because it says the name of the institution, it gives whether they use federal institutional methodology for awarding aid, tells their in-state and out-of-state tuition, if applicable, and then it shows the percent of need met. What the best part of it though is the non-need part, the number of non-need students receiving aid, the percentage of non-need students, like how much in merit aid they're receiving on average. So it might be 94% of students are receiving aid, but it might be only $4,000. Or it might be 3% of students are receiving aid and they're getting on average $50,000. So it gives that data. Now, it's not every institution. It's every institution that plays ball with Jenny and Jeff and are great. But it's a lot of schools and it's really helpful information. For folks, for students who are dead set on 1 to 5 schools, like I must go to one of these colleges or my life is over. net price calculator and the college's website. You should check those anyways, but the net price calculator for some families is kind of burdensome. It just takes a long time. So it's not as quick as the first two resources. But if they're really going to do that in-depth search with a school, net price calculator is the way to go. The college's website, what I tell families is if the first thing you see under the financial aid page of the college's website is them directing you to FAFSA and outside scholarships, that's not a good sign. You need to dig a little deeper. Try the words freshman scholarships in Google search rather than going to a college's website and then trying to navigate to the scholarships page. It's kind of like an Easter egg hunt if you do it that way. I find it's better if you just straight into Google, name of college, freshman scholarships, or if it's an out-of-state college, that's public, non-resident scholarships, like going that kind of specific to get there. And then it was plus. See, you were right, Ethan. 4, maybe more. That's usually how I do it. Because I don't want people to walk away going, "Oh, I already knew about those resources." I'm determined I will find one that everyone can use. So for new counselors or counselors new to cost-conscious advising, there's a great list of institutions meeting 100% demonstrated needs. Some of those meet it with no loans. Some of them meet it with no loans for certain students, and some of them meet it with loans. But they do meet 100% of need. And then Jeff Salingo's buyers and sellers list is great if you're trying to get the hang of which institutions tend to discount more. And that's just, you get a scholarship, you get a scholarship. You have a pulse, you got in, you get a scholarship. Like those are the buyer institutions that are tending to discount. And colleges can switch. If you think you kind of have a handle on what kind of school a school is, they can shift. Like Tulane for the longest time was a buyer, and then it flipped to a seller. And so like just staying up to date with what different institutions are doing. College Raptor is one not a lot of people use really anymore. Or like I haven't heard people talk about as much, but I like it as it's a college search feature, kind of like Big Future has, but it puts cost more at the forefront, which is nice. I don't like that you have to sign up with an email, but just use your domain account. It'll be all right. And then the final one is College Aid Pro. They have some great resources. There's some free resources they do webinars. But they have some paid options. If you as a counselor really want to get into the nitty-gritty of schools and really just want a data set that isn't available publicly, they have data. And it can be worth it. It just depends on how far down this rabbit hole you want to go. Okay, framework number 2. How are we doing on time? Oh, yes, good. Okay. The inverse. So instead of starting with fit and saying, all right, let's find the colleges and let's try to make those work, you can go about this the opposite way. Which is for families who are really cost conscious. So think of your match lighter students, think of your high need students, or think of families that just have a really set budget. For this is where we're going to use the 4 quadrants. So this is a framework for families for whom cost value is the top factor. Determining which types of colleges would be most likely to make themselves affordable based on the students and family factors. So most basically it's this. It's a quadrant, set of quadrants, and ask 2 questions. The y-axis there, sorry, math teacher brain. Y-axis there is how awesome are your students' grades academics? Awesome, not awesome. And yes, this is purposely vague. And then x-axis here, how rich is your family? Not rich, rich. And again, folks are gonna say, well, we're comfortable. Okay, I have folks who, make $40,000 a year and folks who make $400,000 a year who all tell me they're comfortable. Like, let's be true to ourselves here. Where do you think, I just tell folks, pick a quadrant. Like what quadrant do you think that your student is going to fall in from an admissions financial aid perspective? And then based on that, that's going to tell me, okay, without having to see their, tax returns or anything else. Some counselors do that, and that is great practice to like walk families through, like don't keep that information obviously, but like getting into the nitty-gritty is great. But if you're just new to this world and need a quick way, this is great. So based on this, which types of colleges, and again, I'm not naming specific colleges, I'm talking about broad strokes. So in-state public universities, community colleges, that's everybody. Like everybody should look at those. And, if they don't have what you're looking for in your state, check out the reciprocity agreements. If they don't have that, then we can look elsewhere. But in-state public universities are on a lot of college lists for a reason. Service academies, obviously free tuition, obviously very difficult to get into. That's a very specific kind of student. Just throwing that out there as a type of if something that families hadn't considered previously, if you're working with them early enough. And then highly selective private colleges. These fit in kind of 2 places. It's folks with awesome grades. We're talking about places, when I say highly selective private colleges, I'm talking about colleges with lower than 20% admission rate. That's what I mean. typically these are not financial fits for folks in the middle, is what I've been finding. Now, again, colleges with affirmative action, Supreme Court, all of that, like they've been expanding their aid programs to encompass a wider range of incomes, which is great. But still, typically, the folks who are going to find financial fits in these institutions are ones for whom money is not an object. They are happy to write that check. And folks who maybe are Pell eligible students. Those are the ones for whom these institutions are truly affordable. In the middle, that becomes more of a family value conversation, which we'll get to in the next framework. Less selective private colleges. So these are the ones that are discounting. These are ones with maybe a, 40, 60% admission rate, sometimes higher. Still great graduation rates. I'm thinking of colleges that change lives, types of colleges, and they can be great for different reasons. So for a really awesome student, if they can get one of those top-notch scholarships that are more attainable at a less selective institution, that's wonderful. I'm thinking of a student who got into Chapel Hill and a little school down the road called Gardner-Webb. Chapel Hill, she was just another student. Gardner-Webb gave her a full ride. So that's one of, okay, like that's a choice. Like the student has to make that choice for themselves, but we did find a great fit and a affordable institution. For some other students, maybe it's like, I'm thinking of the folks who are, I don't know if you can see my mouse here, like on the x-axis between quadrants 2 and 4. The less selective private colleges, there, it's just, there's enough of a discount rate. If it's the right fit, maybe it's a little more expensive than an in-state institution, but it's the right fit and it's still financially affordable for a quadrant 2 or 4 student. Yeah. Also, less selective private colleges, if your state has need-based programs that apply to private colleges, like I'm thinking Pennsylvania, North Carolina, a number of them do, then that's another way to make these more affordable. If they're in-state and private, that can be an extra few $1,000s. And then international universities. Most people don't think about these. They aren't a great fit for my quadrant 1 kiddos because you have to afford airfare and living expenses, and all your Pell Grants and federal aid a lot of times don't go to these institutions. But for a quadrant 2 kid who wants to be out in 3 years, wants a great education, it's aligned to what they want to do, it can be a great option that's affordable for a lot of families. They just don't think about it. And then I think this is finally out-of-state public institutions. There are workarounds to get those down at a lot of, not all, but some public universities, you can get them down to in-state if you have enough merit. So my quadrant 1 kids, it's probably not a great call for them because they, those institutions, those public institutions in another state are not designed to support them. They're supporting the needs of the students in their own state. So out-of-state public universities, if you have a high enough GPA test score, other admirable qualities, then that's a way that those kids can make it down to in-state tuition. Sometimes, again, never say never. I will never take it off their list because of what type it is, but that's just where I tend to look. Which is why you're probably saying, Amanda, this is so generalized. There are so many exceptions. You're right. These are broad strokes for people who are brand new to this process, and I'm trying to point them in some general directions. If they really like a school, always investigate it. But I'll give you a couple of out-of-state workarounds. So obviously merit, Alabama, Mizzou, Wyoming, like if you have test scores, congratulations, like it's down to pretty much in-state. You've got tuition matches like Maine. Maine will match if you have a certain GPA, match your flagship institution. Tuition exchanges. Sometimes there's nearby ones like ETSU, we're within their range, so we get a discounted tuition. Arkansas does it by state. SUNY Maritime, weirdly, North Carolina's in region for it. So again, there are workarounds. Obviously, family, students who have divorced parents living in 2 different states, that allows that to happen. Florida has a limited number of grandparent vouchers, waivers, that's the word, that exist. So it can happen. And then active military schools. So just kind of flying through these, like there's a number of workarounds to do these. And then there are weird exceptions. Like I'll point out, Oglethorpe has a flagship match as well, just like Maine does. The NC Promise schools like Western Carolina has a great, forensics program, theater program, Native American Studies, a couple things. Their tuition's only like $8,500 out of state. So there are some exceptions that are around. Okay. Shout out to my friend Ely on the subcommittee for college affordability. this is her framework and I love it. So this is a little less technical. So the first framework was do what you're doing, just factor cost in. Second framework was a lot more like, let's start from the beginning and say, okay, here's where you should probably look. This is more of a feelings conversation. So for those of you with a actual, like a master's in counseling, you're going to feel a little more comfortable right now. This is more your wheelhouse. So 3 is the ability to pay versus the willingness to pay. So, have you all ever had a conversation with families, and I can just see thumbs up, amens, something in the chat, where they get their student aid index back, formerly EFC back, and they say they think we can pay what? Or they get their award letter and they're like, this has one too many zeros on it, or they're just astounded at what the colleges think they can pay. Um, I hope that's not I'm not the only one this has happened to. I'm sure I'm not. So having that conversation early about willingness to pay versus ability to pay. So talking families through from the get-go, doing that pre-work early in the counseling process of having them estimate their FAFSA SAI or use a net price calculator so that that doesn't come as a shock after the admissions process. And then asking them up front about willingness to pay. According to this, colleges believe your family can afford X. So once they've done those exercises of like seeing what their net price calculator is, looking at college scorecards, seeing what folks in their band of incomes are typically paying, then asking them how they feel about that before diving into the process later. Just affirm, clarify, here's what I know direct, just that same framework of here's what colleges are expecting, here's what you're wanting to pay. Obviously, there's usually going to be a gap. And then suggested reading for these families. If you have some families you work with who you really like, who just really want to learn more about this and dive in, The Price You Pay for College is a great one. He highlights College of Wooster as an excellent example. And then Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be, Frank Bruni is another one. He highlights University of Delaware. And that's one of those, for those of you who are hoping for one of the earlier conversation stems about I'm only going to pay for this college or we're only going to go to this college. Like this helps soften folks up and broaden their minds as to like what constitutes a good college? What are you able to pay? What are you willing to pay for college? Okay. And then last one, I put gentleman for Soka, Bill. Bill is his name. I blanked on his name when I made this slide. I'm so sorry, Bill. Build a budget and then go shopping. So he has this great framework of walking folks through how you're going to pay from college is from your past, your present, and your future. And that's parents and students. So past savings, what do you already have saved? Current income, what out of your current income are you going to be able to contribute each year? And what are feasible loan payments that you're going to work into your budget? Do you have outside contributors and outside scholarships? Okay, this is all the money we conceivably have. Let's set an annual budget, and let's also remember the possibility of a 5th year or something coming out of the blue that hasn't been planned. This is how we're going to build our budget, and this is how we're going to stay within this budget. We're going to say, before we get the award letters, this is what we need it to be in order to make this commitment. Okay. All right. Some other quick stuff. I can kind of plug these. Some the other stuff I might have done that you might find helpful that kind of talk about more of these are YouTube's crash courses, Paying for College in 4 Steps guide, and then some on-demand courses. That's it. That was kind of an abrupt end. Sorry, guys.
No, that was great. Will you do me a favor and just click on the top couple just so that you can maybe you just show
Yes.
folks what those are and just walk them through, because I imagine that those are like that'll kind of go in the file of like, oh, I should check those out sometime. And without knowing, for example, how
What they really
comprehensive
look
the
like.
top one is,
Yeah.
they won't
Sorry.
do it. No, go.
Yeah. All right, let me do that. Here we go. So we'll start with the Paying for College in 4 Steps. Here we go. Share. Here we go. It looks like this. Let me make it a little bigger.
Pop-ups, sorry.
Oh, pop up. Yeah, sorry.
It'll be
Sorry,
on my
Paul.
team's fault. I'm not even going to take responsibility for it. That's funny.
Yeah, so make this a little bigger. Here we go. So yeah, it's a walkthrough guide. So this is, some people had different COVID projects. Some people did sourdough starters. Ethan convinced me it would be a worthwhile and good endeavor to write this for
Which
folks.
I want to talk to you about writing the book, because I think this is a book, basically.
The first version was so much longer. Anyways, so yes, this is the shortened version, and it's still, I don't know, 100 pages or something. But broken down, searchable, not meant to be read all at once in one sitting. It is hey Ethan, it
Sorry.
is a step-by-step. So scholarshiping. So when you don't have time to talk to a family about all the intricacies of how scholarships work, please send them here. It's free. It's right here. And just it walks them through private scholarships, local scholarships, institutional scholarships. Talks about like how people, scholarship strategically. Click on that one. So like, and it has these really like it'll take you 10 minutes, apply to any of the 3 types of scholarships, effectively enlist help, and it gives them like a scholarship tracker they can fill in. The 5 college types are on here and determining financial fits. So I talk more about these different types. And this is like more in depth for folks who just need more information in a really friendly way. As you can see, there are memes. It is great. But that doesn't undercut how much content is in here for your
It's
family.
yeah, thanks. That does the thing that I wanted folks to be like, oh, dang, there's like a lot there. Great. Thanks.
Awesome.
And there's a short version that Amanda also linked to if you just want the like, okay, give me the 20-minute version of this. And
Right. Yes, I did write that.
yeah,
So many things.
some questions came in here. I'm just going to go from the top because there aren't too many. Is the 4-point conversation something that you'd have before family has done some calculators, SAI, et cetera? This one's from Amy. Hi, Amy.
Oh, that's interesting. So I would say it usually comes up if you're using, it depends on which framework you're using as to when it comes up. Like if you're using the match fit cost framework, as soon as they start talking about cost or as soon as they bring it up, I'll do that. It's more of a reactive. It's that framework is when they say something to this effect, this is how I know I'm going to respond, rather than a purposeful, intentional, like guiding them to that.
Right. It's not like part of a process. It's sort of like, I can use this framework. And it seems
Yes,
like that's a
yes.
really good framework to use in pretty much any college admissions question, or yeah, just any question where you're sort of in you're the authority figure, especially with a one-on-one. I just love that.
Mhm.
Jen's asking, what's your favorite source? I'm changing a little bit for a list of need-aware privates versus need-blind.
Ooh, I
Yeah.
have been trying to get a solid list on this for years. I don't know that there's a public one anywhere that is reliable. If
Mhm.
anyone knows one, please put it in the chat. Happy
Same.
to look into it. There might be one on like on the like IECA or like a private counselor's like listserv somewhere that someone created, but those institutional priorities can shift. And so I'm always leery of being really hard on that, or like really firm on like leaning on a list. Usually what I'm doing is that's one of those things that goes into the packet for the family of like, great, we've met. Here are the things that you're going to take care of. Like you're going to reach out. And if they really don't want to, like if there's a school and they just don't want to ask or reach out, then I will. I'll just reach out to the financial aid office and say, so what's your position on this? Assuming I can't find it anywhere on their website first,
Right.
because we all know financial aid officers are a little strapped for time at the moment.
Linda and Lisa both ask, how accurate have you found net price calculators to be since the FAFSA retool?
Oh, okay. So a couple things. Great, excellent question. Gold stars, both of you. All right. So what I will say is for folks using net price calculators for institutions that are CSS profile schools anyways and have been CSS profile schools, I treat them with the same amount of respect and skepticism that I did before. For FAFSA only institutions, I kind of ignored them this past year and was like, yeah, we'll do it, but like I don't know how much I trust these. But that said, it's a worthwhile tool. What I'll usually do is an amalgamation with families. If it's a net price calculator, especially one that only lasts a few questions, the fewer questions it asks, the more leery I am of the results. Like I'm not really confident in those. But if it's a really in-depth net price calculator and it uses the term SAI instead of the term EFC in it, because that should come up. A lot of net price calculators will ask you, do you already know your SAI or do you already know your EFC? If it says EFC, clearly it hasn't been updated. If it says SII, it probably has been updated to make that formula part of it. So I'll use that. And then I will also use other resources between a net price calculator, between Jenny and Jeff's resources, between the buyers and sellers. I'll from those things kind of put together a profile of what I think the school is doing. Again, if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of it, something like College Aid Pro or Smart Track or a similar program or Tuition Fit or something, like there's a number of other institutions that are trying to collect award letter data to get better results for folks.
There's this really specific one. Sharon asked, what do you think of the resources? My institution?
My
Go.
intuition. Yeah. Or yeah. It's not what I meant to do. Sorry. Let me escape
It's
from
okay.
there. Um, I played with it for a while and then I kind of got out of the habit of using it. Does anyone else want to chime in on the chat? Please do. Or Alex, I know one of our moderators, or Rebecca, like if you've used it more, you can
Yeah.
share, but it's one of those resources it's on the to-do list of I'm gonna go play with this.
Yeah.
Okay, Alex says he hasn't used it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alex.
Lisa's asking you to look into the crystal ball a little bit and say, because of FAFSA issues, do you think we'll see more colleges jumping on the CSS bandwagon?
That's a really interesting question. So there's a couple things. Yes, I am in that crystal ball sphere with you. So do you all remember, for those of you who are veterans of this profession, do you all remember the year that Common App didn't work right and like fell to pieces, and then we ended up with the Coalition app, and then it took off for a while, and it didn't really take off? I'm sensing a similar pattern. So
Hmm.
FAFSA let us down, and now some schools have jumped to CSS profile, but also some schools have started making their own forms, which makes me feel really bad for families because, oh, look, here's yet another form to do. Um, so I think that trends might continue for institutions where they might have more student, like CSS profile costs them money. So maybe, and it's a lot of data to go through. I think what we'll probably see more of is more institutional forms before we see more CSS, unless it's a really affluent school who's really generous. That tends to be the types of schools that tend to get to jump on the CSS wagon. Um, yeah, there's something else. Oh, I don't know if you guys saw this, but the gentleman, Jeremy Singer, who is head of College Board, is jumping over to be the FAFSA czar. And as I said, well, Ethan and I were chatting before this webinar started. That seems a bit like letting the fox in the hen house. Forgive my southernism here of like, oh, the guy who is with the company that's in charge of CSS profile is going in and dealing with all the inner workings of FAFSA. Okay, well, I'm gonna hope for the best here. But I'm wondering if that's going to change how FAFSA or how CSS retools itself after they jump back to College Board. I don't know. This is long-term crystal ball gazing. So I don't know. I'm hopeful that it's resolved. The gentleman, Cordero, is like swore to Congress it will be ready October 1. We don't have a draft yet. We're not going to get a 90-day comment period. Somebody's like I read on Inside Higher Ed. So like I'm hopeful. Let's just all hope together. Let's manifest that FAFSA is just going to work great this year. Let's just put that out there to the universe.
Here's a really specific one, but I'm kind of into it. This is like we're testing your, I don't know, the broadness of knowledge. Here we go. Any specific merit-based scholarship resources for girls in engineering?
Yeah. Give me 1 second. Can I make that a follow-up one? Do you mind like Alex, do you mind grabbing the email for that one and I can just follow up because I know I have it somewhere, but I don't want to like have everyone just like
Okay.
spinny wheel while I look for it. But
Here's
yes.
another follow-up one that, someone's asking, can I connect after the seminar? There's this very specific question this person has. Are you open to that?
Yeah, I would not open this up to the families and parents because I get inundated, but for you all, for my lovely counselor people, yes, please. I would love to connect with you. Any help I can do. And in fact, I didn't share this at the beginning, but one of the things I do, I guess in the Ethan sphere, I'll call it that, is for the Matchlighters this past year, I was the financial aid go-to person for everybody. So there's like a running list of questions, and I would just pop on an answer for all the Matchlighter counselors. So like if I can support you, please let me. I love empowering counselors to empower students.
That sounds like a good time for me to talk about what the Matchmaking program is.
Yeah, sorry.
No, no, not sorry. For those of you who are like, what even is that? We have this program where we pair awesome counselors like you with students who are low income, and we verified to make sure they're low income for one-on-one help. And the commitment is 10 hours. And if you are willing to open to interested in working with a student for 10 hours, we would love to have you. And this is a great fit for counselors who maybe don't have access to, in many cases, high achieving low income students. And these students, we've found that because they kind of go through all the hoops of like going through the application process and they've gone and reach out resources, they are in many cases some of the most active, engaged, like
Highly
students
motivated. Yeah.
highly, highly motivated. And every year we have, in terms of the acceptances, in terms of where students end up getting in, a huge, wonderful range. And also many of them, and I don't know what it is about this particular program, but get into highly selective schools. And I'm talking like 10 students into Harvard kind of situation where it's like of the cohort, which is usually somewhere between 400 to 600, the students are just like crushing it. So that's my pitch for Match Sliders. I put the link in the chat. And you also get great professional development, we do regular sessions for folks and bring
And
you
I'm one
more.
of those.
Yeah, exactly. We bring you more closely into the CEG sphere. Let's do like two more and then we'll call it. Do you have any opinion or thoughts on financial planners who are retooling slash reframing their skill set in terms of college cost and planning?
Ooh, interesting. So when I talk to families, one quick side thing is I always tell them I am not a CFP. Like I am not a certified financial planner. I make that very clear. Like I can tell you about all the implications of what you're going to do and how it's going to impact your college affordability, but I don't know how that's going to work out in tax land. So in terms of folks who are retooling, I would say as if they're open to learning more, if they're going to the same things that I am professional development wise, that's a wonderful resource for families to have. And I think that's a natural pairing of that skill set for financial planners to have this background. In fact, in my area, I work in few remotely. I work with a few folks who do that and they just ask me questions. I have a buy me a cup of coffee thing. Like they just, hey, I have a question. Here, I'll buy you a cup of coffee. Just answer this question. And so, yeah, so in terms of them, as long as I have seen people do this well, and I have seen people do it in a predatory way, and that I don't like, of like, let me tell you all these loopholes that the college planners just don't know. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like let's be genuine about this. Let's be clear about what we can and cannot do. Let's not make promises. So it's one of those, like, you're a counselor, use your gut. If it's someone who is reading the same things and sharing good information, great. And I often refer folks out and say, hey, I don't know this stuff, but you might want to connect with somebody who does. I hope that answered your question.
I hope so too. Last one, another really specific one, but let's go for it. Any scholarships? And by the way, somebody asked a specific question about are there any military academies that don't require the tests? And I put that out, and it seems like I didn't get any responses in the chat. So I also looked it up on ChatGPT, and it said it didn't give me any examples of military academies that don't look for test scores. So shrug emoji. Um,
Yeah. Like I would Lisa, I can never pronounce her last name. I'm sorry, Lisa R. We've been friends for years. Her last name, I'm gonna put it in the chat.
yeah, I know who you're talking about.
She's awesome. That's her last name. She's great. She has a website, and that's something that's her specialty. She works with a lot of military families and college. So if it's on her, it should be on her website.
Yeah. And then last one, any scholarships this might be a follow-up too, for international students in STEM areas?
I would say that a lot of those are just open. Like I'm thinking of like there's scholarship competitions
Yeah.
that a lot of those students will go for, but other scholarships, nothing immediately comes to mind. I think it would be the same advice I would give to students who are pursuing any other kind of scholarship is start local, see if there's anything at your state, country level
Mhm.
for those, especially for those smaller countries. And then from there, look at institutions and see. I don't know if there's any specific for international students.
Mhm. I don't
Yeah,
either.
nothing's immediately coming to mind. If I think of something, then I will post it on the document for this
And if you
group.
haven't checked out our hub for international students, I'll just
Yes.
plug that really quick. If you just search College Essay Guy International Student Hub, you'll see a whole bunch of resources, um, ranging from, a huge financial aid guide to mistakes that students make, here, I'll just bring it up real quick. If you just search College Essay Guy Hub, Application Hub, I'll show you this really quick. Let me show you where to find it too. Um, Real quick. So if you go to free resources and you go to college admissions, you'll see this is our college application hub, which by the way, we've added an AI search thing, which has been pretty helpful. That helps sort of scan the site, and it's been really good so far. And then this is the hub for international students. And for those of you who missed it, I just clicked this thing. Are you an international student? Head this way and you'll see a ton of stuff. And in the financial aid realm, there's just a bunch of great stuff in here. So I would recommend checking out these articles. I'll put them in the chat in case folks don't know about those.
Yeah, a lot of times I think that that question is well worded in that maybe that specific question is hard to answer, but the type of question is more indicative of what a lot of counselors and families ask. They'll say, I just want the scholarship for a student from West Virginia who's on the spectrum and studying music. Show me that scholarship. And like they get, I mean, that one was not that specific, but like they're looking for just point me straight to it. And that's one of the challenges of scholarships is they're just various and ever changing. And so trying to pin down the ultimate list. I do encourage folks, find a couple scholarship websites you like. I kind of like Scholarship 360. That one's fun. And I always get the ultimate scholarship guide that's in book form because I don't know, I just like paper. So just when I get those questions, when they come up, I will search 3 or 4 of my favorite resources to try to get an answer. And if I don't get an answer at the end of those, then I'll say, okay, it's not that it's not out there, it's that I haven't found it readily. It is your future. You are welcome to keep searching. Please keep looking. Google is your best friend.
Totally. Thanks. You've over delivered again in the best way. I'm so grateful. I learn from you every time. Not just like content specific stuff, but there's like a way that you present, a way that you engage folks, a way that you keep me going. And I was tracking the numbers as I often do during the session. And up until Q&A, we had like 100% retention. And that to me speaks to just what a beautiful presenter you are. So thank you again for being a part of my world. And thanks y'all for joining us. And we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you all.